masseuse is listening to, so give her a splooge. Greg and Jojo and Greg, Joe and Greg, Greg and Joe. I can't come up with any lyrics, so just start the fucking show, bro. And let's hope our two guineas aren't a no-show. So now let's go.
Look at this. The Three Musketeers. We're here all together at the start of the show. What's up? Welcome to Swol Lyfe, SWOLLYFE. Brand new sponsor, Gregorio.
I'm going to take some of this right now because I didn't get a lot of sleep. And the energy one. So that's what
SwolLyfe.com presents the Greg and Joe show. And of course, this is an episode we've been looking forward to since last week.
Anthony and I went to Easter eggs. So Easter's coming, right? So
yeah. Yes. Buon Pasqua, everybody. But of course, Anthony, also joining us right from the get-go, we want to make sure we get I want full-time on with him today. Anthony Roberts, who is no secret, has been around the industry forever. Greg and I both know you personally.
Oh, yeah.
You're
good
from
man.
our neck of the woods. We've hung out together. That picture that I posted, I think that was from 2010 or something, Greg, or 2013.
Yeah, one of those Bob events. You know what I'm saying?
At Strong and Shapely at Bob Bonham's gym out in Jersey by the Meadowlands there. But of course, Anthony, like basically right before we went on air, you sent me the link to part 2 of the article that you guys were discussing on RX Muscle. And I'm not going to be redundant. If you guys didn't see the RX Muscle show, watch it, and you'll know what's going on. You'll get caught up on it. We're not going to go over all of that again because we don't have the time. We want to get in and talk a little bit about what you and I spoke about on the phone, Anthony, and the part 2 of the article, which you just sent me, and it's on thinksteroids.com. So can we put the link? Recommend you people. I can
Let's put the link in there.
I can do that. Yes.
Let's put the link in. So if you guys are watching the show, you guys, if you're watching this even after we're doing this live, you can click on the link and see Anthony's stuff.
Yeah.
Go right to Anthony's site.
Yep, I got it right here. Hang on a sec.
I just dropped the link in the chat if you need it.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, you did. I'm going to look for it.
Yeah.
Anthony,
I opened up a window on my other browser. But of course, this is a story that got, really good, interesting, a fantastic episode last week on RX Muscle. And it came up again on the other day, Tuesday, Greg, on RX Muscle again, just, for a little bit. But I basically want to discuss with you guys and have Anthony explain a little bit, because there are certain things that I saw on that show that I didn't agree with totally, but not, listen, it is what it is. We know that these guys did talk to the authorities when they did not have a legal obligation to do that. That we know for sure. I thought calling them federal informants was a bit strong. I'm not saying it's completely incorrect, but it definitely has an asterisk next to it, and it needs some explanation. And Anthony, when you and I were on the phone, we discussed what were the options to use as far as what to call these guys, and we were kind of going back and forth. So besides the reason, listen, now in general cases now, an informant either does it for one of 3 things. The main 2, court consideration, they're going to get a break on their charges, which the 2 owners of Transformics, we're going to talk about that as well, and did and got kind of out of their pickle by giving up the guy they were getting their stuff from, which is referenced in Anthony's part 2 with the Boston, Massachusetts company. They either get court consideration, they get paid. There are some guys that get paid all the time for just dropping names and spots. And the third, which is kind of a smaller thing, is revenge. Usually the example they give in like a law enforcement thing is like, an ex-wife or ex-girlfriend says, hey, my boyfriend fucking sells fucking cocaine, and the cops do it. These guys have court consideration. No, because they weren't being charged with anything. Were they getting paid? No, they were not getting paid by the FDA, which was the agency doing this investigation. Was there a revenge factor? That's probably the one that could fit into here, because they both got fucked by Transformics and not paid the money that guys promised them. They're more than witnesses, because they're not just a complete third party, which is just the guy looking out the window and sees the shooting in the alleyway around the corner. So that's what, when you and I were on the phone, we were both like, where does it fit, kind of. So I'm gonna kick it to you now. And when I read the article, I thought you did a fucking amazing job of explaining that, because that seems to be the biggest. You're welcome. 100% earned, hold 100%. The biggest issue that people have, I think, and Greg and myself being two of them, is that this label of informant is kind of, it's a dirty word or whatever, but it just has a lot of negative connotations attached to it, which I don't think apply in this instance. So I'll give you the floor, and you talk about how you broke that down in part two of this article.
Yeah, so it was really process of elimination, right? I think confidential informant, that has a connotation of guys that are going back and forth, right? Like they're undercover kind of a thing, like, not undercover from a law enforcement perspective, but that they're repeat sort of customers, right? They're confidential. Their names are being kept quiet. They're going back and forth. That's not what happened here. Cooperating informant doesn't work either, because they're not cooperating. Cooperating is when you're trying to get out of something, right? So they're not CIs. They're not just witnesses, obviously, because they're not a disinterested third party. And I eventually settled on, I had this discussion previously with one of my friends. We were going back and forth. Informant, just because, the sort of the word, right? Like information, informant. Boston met with them once. Jerry met with them twice. This wasn't an ongoing thing. As you pointed out, they had no consideration, so nothing of value was given to them. I mean, you could say revenge has value, but nothing was given to them. So it was kind of, I realized that some people think informant is going to be like what they see on CSI or what they see on whatever, Blue Bloods, whatever cop shows they watch. They think that's the informant. I knew it was going to, I took a lot of deliberate care to explain exactly what it was, but I think people saw that phrase and thought something that was completely way overstepping what they actually did. These are two guys who put out videos, right? So the other thing I would add is that Boston said a bit more than he said in his videos, but these are guys who put videos out saying, hey, buy peptides from Transformics or buy SARMs from Transformics. And then the feds went to them and they said, oh yeah, Transformics sells peptides. Transformics sells SARMs, right? So 90% of what they said in those interviews were the same things they put in their videos, right? So obviously there's an evidentiary value to getting a personal conversation from the Fed's point of view, right? They're not going to show the grand jury a YouTube video, right? And just say, hey, take this guy's word for it, right? They want to say, we talked to this guy. But I was really left with informant out of just every possible choice. I tried to find the one that had the most accurate and the least wiggle room for people to think it was something it wasn't. And that's how I approached it. And I really wasn't left with a ton of good options. And there's a school of thought that you say anything to the feds and you're
A rat.
Yeah. That's not how I think. I don't think that at all. I don't think there's any reason anyone, right? Because you think about it, these videos these videos have been live for like 6-7 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's no reason, by my line of thinking, that anyone should feel differently about Boston Lloyd or Jerry Ward today, as we sit here, than they thought about them a month ago.
Right.
When, the same information was out there, it was just in video form. The fact that they later sat down and talked to the feds and essentially repeated the same thing, I don't think should make people feel differently. And when you talk about, and Transformics were snitches, those guys, right? Spencer Gill, Anthony Novak, those guys rolled. But
Yes.
Jerry Ward and Boston Lloyd, the thing that people get hung up on with the snitch term or the rat term, the reason people think that's such a distasteful thing to do is because it's a betrayal, right? Hey, we were in this together and you betrayed me. That's not what happened here.
Right.
Boston and Ward got effed out of their money, right? And had to stop doing business. Transformics fired the first shot and betrayed these guys. There's no difference. If you beat a guy with a kid for 10 or 15 grand, I don't see any difference between that and robbing his house for 10 or 15 grand. You just took money out of this guy's pocket. So if there's a betrayal here, it's only on Transformics' side, right? Boston and Ward did not betray Transformics, and that's the main thing that makes rats or snitches. That's the main characteristic that people hate. It's the betrayal. There was no betrayal here, right? So, again, nobody should think about these guys any differently today as they did 5 years ago, 3 years ago, or 3 weeks ago. That's my
Totally
position.
agree.
Thank you. I agree 100%. Now, but I feel that, look, I'm not gonna bash any of my friends from the other, from where. But the thing is, I think some people like this stuff. They glorify this stuff. It helps to push, a narrative. And I think it's not right because, first of all, they're not here to protect themselves.
Yeah.
What you did was you informed people. And what you did was perfectly right and dead on. Okay. And what you just said is dead on. But, I felt like, when Dave said, well, get over it. Like, truth hurts. Well, what's the truth here? You're telling what you're saying is one, what you're saying is being interpreted totally different from when we did that show. The other day. They're making it look like, everybody in the comments, they have rat fucks, those fucking rats. You don't rat when nobody goes to jail. Those two guys from Transformics, they were in trouble before they went to Jerry and Boston. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Right. They brought the trouble. Jerry and Boston did not bring the trouble. And by the way, Big Frank is in the comments here. Big Frank, I love you, bro. That's one of my boys right there. And let me tell you, Big Frank was with me. Me and Big Frank were together. And Jerry was talking to Frank and I in like 2017 about this. So Frank was right there too. He'll tell you.
You said on the video, Greg, at the Arnold. What you were talking about in that clip.
Jerry was just saying like shit, like holy fuck, Jerry was a little more concerned for Boston because Boston was in deep. You know what I'm saying? Yep. He was saying that to us. Jerry did say that, and Frank will tell you he was a little concerned that Boston was in a little bit over his head because Boston. Jerry's a smart guy. Not that Boston was. Boston liked to talk, so he would kind of offer up a little bit too much stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's basically what Jerry was saying to us. But he was saying that Transformics brought the heat on them. That's really the get. Not they brought the. It's not like the Fed said, "Let's get Transformics, so let's go get Jerry and Boston." It was the opposite. Transformics was in trouble, and when you fuck people, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You don't pay them what they're supposed to get paid. Yep. Hey, listen, we're all, you know what I mean? But I just felt like on the whole, when we did that show the other day, the way it was being translated, not by you, Anthony, not by you, but the way it was almost like some people relish in other people's misery too, you know, and I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Both Jerry and Boston were my friends, and you know, again, Big Frank was right there. We heard it from Jerry's mouth about this stuff. I forgot about that when we were doing the show. Actually, Big Frank is the one who actually reminded me after that show. He said, "Bro, remember we were talking?" And I'm like, "Holy shit, I forgot all about that," you know. But
yeah, so let me circle back to one of the points you made about Transformics bringing this on themselves. What I also have is a memorandum of the actual investigation.
yes.
And the feds didn't say, "Oh, here's a video. Why don't we open an investigation?" The investigation was ongoing. That Boston and Jerry had nothing to do with why Transformics was in trouble. Transformics was under investigation, and then the feds spotted the video, and they said, "Hey, you know, we might as well talk to these guys as well." Boston and Jerry didn't start any of this. They had made undercover buys before Jerry and Boston were involved. They, you know, I was telling Joe this. The Fed showed up to their retail store. They had a retail store on like Sepulveda Boulevard or something in California. And, you know, Novak's driving around. He's got the late model orange and black Corvette, right? Flashy. You know, agent walks into his store. He's like, "Hey, I'm the owner." Gives him his business card. Gives him, you know, the guy says, "Oh, I'm looking to bulk up." He's selling them, you know, quote unquote pro hormones that were actually steroids. Then he says, "Oh, we have a sister company, and the sister company sells all these peptides." So this guy, I'm pretty sure it was Novak, dug himself into a hole that nobody gets out of. Period. But like they could have. And so every time this agent made a buy from whether it was U.S. Fusion Supply or whether it was Boss Sports Nutrition or whether it was Transformics peptides, they had all, as far as I could tell from the documents, they had all of the credit card processors running under Boss Sports Nutrition to avoid losing their processing. They ran everything through the legitimate supplement company. This guy would text, you know, Novak and say, "Oh, I'm looking to bulk up. Is IGF-1 good?" And he says, "Yeah, we sell that. That's great for bulking up. You inject this much." Like, so there's no chance that these guys were going to ever beat these charges.
Right.
Before Boston and Ward, like, got involved. They were cooked.
Right.
Yeah.
They were done. That's what I'm saying. They brought the heat on those guys.
Yeah.
And Boston was a very innocent guy. I used to talk to him all the time. When I mean innocent, I meant like, you know, very easygoing, naive. And the problem is, like, you know, they tricked him into believing like he's part owner of the company, he's going to be making all this shot all. And then when it comes time to get paid, you know, just like everybody else, you know, they give it to you under the table. You know, they fuck you over. And I don't.
Well, he was a third owner. He had these contracts signed with them, and when the feds approached Boston, Boston said, "Oh no, actually, I'm an owner, right?" Which is a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing to say. But he said, "No, I'm a 1/3 owner," and the feds were like, "Your name isn't on anything. Your name's not on the bank accounts. Your name's not on the articles of incorporation. Your name's not on the Secretary of State business incorporation. Like, your name's not on anything from the beginning." These guys,
they were just fucking throwing that and a facade of that. So he was thinking, and then even in the second article, you said Boston never had any income from it other than his affiliate link. There wasn't like a third of the profits, right? So how were you an owner of then?
No distributions, nothing. These guys. So that tells me that sometimes money gets involved and people get weird, right? Sometimes there's too much money involved and people start thinking, "All right, I'm going to screw this guy over." You know, I'm going to. That's not what happened. These guys always intended to screw him out of his share, always from the beginning.
Maybe God was looking out for him, though, because he wasn't on there as an owner. Otherwise, he might have gotten serious trouble.
He could have had, because he's responsible then.
Joe, but I mean, Boston's over there telling him, "Hey, listen, I'm part owner of the company." Meanwhile, that company, like, you know, like the owners are the ones going down. I mean, he was so naive to things. You know,
he didn't realize, because
Right.
He didn't
Yeah.
think he was in trouble. I just want to address this comment by, hey, Frank, what's going on, buddy? They believe there was a gray area in legal. That's why the feds wanted. Frank, definitely after the show, I don't want you to leave now. Read Anthony's article because Anthony addresses this exactly, that there is no, I don't want to get into that whole thing now because I want to talk more about what we're on. I'm not trying to change the subject, but there really is no such thing as a gray area. These things are fucking illegal, straight and plain, and you spell that out perfectly with your example with the alcohol and rubbing alcohol and all of that stuff. 21 and under 20.
Yeah,
So Frank, definitely check out there's no such thing as a gray area, how Anthony has one of his paragraphs in this article that's on thinksteroids.com, where we drop the links. Definitely, I want to just say something. An informant's always a witness, but not all witnesses are informants. And that's kind of like a little, whatever, a stupid saying or whatever, but it has a little legs to it in the way is that, they were more than witnesses because an informant always has to have a motive, basically. So the only motive that they fit into would be that revenge one in a way, but also they're informants, but they're also not informants. And you explained it a certain way in the article. Just give us a little bit on, like, okay, you feel that they weren't, they're not what people perceive as being a federal informant. And that's kind of what I felt was brought out in the title, the thumbnail of that show, that it definitely gave it more of that type of vision, if you will, than is at real. So is there such thing as an informant that's not really an informant, if you will? Kind of a play on words, like.
Well, right. On the one hand, right, you have the guys who romanticize things, right, and they think that's omerta, and they think everything you say, like to a certain segment, if you report that your house got broken into and you know who it is, you're a snitch, right? Yeah. That's one level, like that, cartoonish level that I can't even think that that's reality, and then there's this. The level these guys were on where, they mentioned Boston in the indictment, but there's nothing to me because these guys, got betrayed by the company. They were out for like ages before they got approached, right? They didn't go to the feds, right? They were out. They were completely out. They wrote it off as a loss.
Right.
They just left, right? They said, all right, I'm out of here. And then the feds came to them.
Both Boston and Jerry were both out of the right. Okay.
Yeah, they both suspected for a long time that so the way these guys had it set up, they didn't give Boston or Jerry any opportunity to audit the books or even see the books. And both guys, when you have an affiliate code, let's say last month you made 4 videos, right? And you did 1,000 views on each video. This month, you made 8 videos. You got 2,000 views on each video, and you pushed the products harder, and you made less money. That right? That doesn't. Right. These guys are going to figure that out right away, right? Right away.
No, 100%. 100%. These guys, they knew. Jerry and Boston both knew that these guys were giving them the finger right up their butts. You know what I'm saying? They knew it. Okay, so they were done, with the company. It's just that Boston's naive, and you almost feel like, he's the kind of guy that, he just tells it, he tells the truth, and he's talking to cops, and they're sitting there. I mean, again, thank God that he wasn't written down on the paperwork, but that just goes show how what bullshit these kind of guys were by actually telling the guy, making the guy believe that he was part owner of the company. And you know how many people bought shit because they trust when Boston Lloyd says, take this stuff, it must be good because he tells the truth and he owns the company. So I know that their shit's legit. So he drove a lot of traffic to those guys. He made those guys a lot of money and he didn't get his part of the bargain out of it. So that just goes to show you who the one with the real malice is here. Okay, that's not the way it was portrayed on the other show that we did the other day. You know what I mean? Not you, by you, but you know what I'm saying. The way they made it look like the breaking news, and we're gonna fucking, and that's what I didn't like. And by the way, that wasn't Aaron on the show the other day. You guys
I was
watching
just
this.
about to ask you to bring that up, Greg.
Yeah, that was not Aaron.
Yeah.
That's his, it's some guy that just made believe he's Charlie Arms on here. And I asked him, if you're really Charlie Arms, what's Charlie Arms' last name? Here he is right there. Okay. If you tell me what Charlie Arms' real last name is, then I'll believe you're Charlie Arms. But you don't know his last name, and I do. And anyway, I'm going to take Joe.
Yeah,
Joe, I'm going to take a little bit of this because I'm shot right now. I didn't get a lot of sleep. So I'm going to take a little bit of Swol. This is the energy. I'm going to put it right. Look at this. The scooper here is a little small one, but I'm going to put it right here in my freaking water.
right in your tray.
Well, actually, this is the Swol. They have an energy one. It's right. Anyway, that's the energy one. And I'm going to put that. That's like bubble gum or something.
Use code MSM15, guys. Save 15%.
And I'm putting it in my what the hell is this shit? This is seltzer water. I put it in club soda, not But I need the energy, so.
You can save 15%,
it looks like I'm lit.
right?
What's that?
Save 15%. MSM15 code. Boom. Or in the description of this video, there's my actual affiliate code. If you click in, and that's for the Greg and Joe show to save 15%.
That really works. Anyway, I'm sorry, Anthony. But Anthony.
No, that's a good point. But you know what? I thought that really was Aaron, right? And everybody on this show, I know. I'm glad that you actually, you're still in touch with her. Lucy is friends with her, and you guys.
Lucy is a text message nut job. But anyway, her and Aaron talk almost every single day. Almost every single day, her and Aaron talk. They talk about everything. And then Aaron was saying, "Holy shit, who said I was on that?"
It wasn't her, because I when I read that, and Anthony, I don't know if you saw that episode the other day on RX. Somebody making believe they were Aaron. They used the same screen name in her face. I mean, anybody could fucking, shill as somebody else. But the comment was would almost made it sound like it wasn't a troll. It's like, something along the lines.
You talked about my husband.
You're desecrating my husband's name or something. Right. It wasn't like a fuck you. It was just like, what you're doing is wrong kind of thing. And it was like, and Dave was like, well, if that's her, she wants to come on the show. We all thought it was her, like viewers and panel alike.
She doesn't get involved in this stuff.
I don't think she would. If she ever wanted to come on our show, she knows that, you guys.
I could ask her, but she wasn't even. I did talk. We did talk a little bit. And she's not upset with Anthony at all. It's the way that they portrayed it on look, I love those guys. Those are my boys. Okay, but I disagree with this. And I have a right to disagree because, if it was me, they wouldn't hesitate 2 seconds to throw me right under the fucking bus. Okay? Right under the bus. I keep getting asked the same story. Over and over again. Why'd you get arrested? I won't even. Same shit over and over. And you already know the answers. But the thing is that, see, now we're clearing, Anthony's actually clearing a lot of shit up right now. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of you guys watching this are probably going, holy shit. See, they didn't give him a chance because, some people relish in this kind of stuff. They like to hear, give me the bad shit. You know what I mean? But, Anthony's now clearing it up. He's making it now. Even I'm realizing shit. That Transformics was the real demon in all this. Not Jerry. Jerry and Boston were casualties of war. That's the way I look at it. Would you say that, Anthony, something like that?
Yeah, well, I would say, look, feds show up to your house. They want to talk to you about your old partners, right? That screwed you over, right? And there's no way you're gonna say, no, let me take the hit for these guys. Oh, you want to? Yeah. F you. Get out of here. Come back with a warrant, right? Nobody's doing that, right? And the feds go to their house. They have this conversation. They probably say, "Listen, we're not interested in you. We're interested in these guys, right? These guys we saw." And they'd already seen the video, right? So most likely, they're walking in saying, "Hey, we want to talk to you about this video you made about these guys who beat you for some money," right? I'm sure that was their pitch, right? Hey, we saw a video. We want to talk to you further. At that point, why would you ever say no? There's just nobody who would say, I'm not talking about them. The feds come in, they start talking. Oh, they want to know this. both Jerry and Boston, I think, kind of thought like that what they were doing was fine.
Was righteous. Was
Yeah.
righteous. You know why?
Yeah.
Some guy fucks your wife, right? And
Right.
then the cops come to you and say, "Hey, Joe Matarazzo, who fucked your wife, by the way, we're investigating him for something." You'd be like, "Oh, really? Well, let me tell you what I know about Joe Matarazzo." You know
Right.
what I'm saying? That's
Right.
basically what you're trying to
Yes.
say. Right or wrong, Anthony?
No, that's exactly it. Yeah, yeah. Let me put the coffee on. How much time do you have? Yeah, let's talk about that guy. Right? But
Yeah, because they're pissed
was
off at these two guys. Yeah, they're not. I mean, the other thing that you and I were talking about, Anthony, and it's not an exact, but usually the memorandum of interview Fed form is not for somebody that's a perpetrator, a part of the crime, or even an informant, if you will. It's more of a witness type of thing.
Yeah,
But you said that
frequently.
there were occasions. I think it was like you said, out of X amount, there was only like 3 of these ones that guys started on the end on this form and ended up getting charges thrown on them. So it's like I said, it's not an exact science, but one of the first things that I looked up when I was after watching the RX show was memorandum of interview, the form, and the little different than the stuff that we used when I did shit like this with different names because it wasn't Fed. But there's certain forms where you're just talking to somebody that's a witness. They're not considered an informant.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is the same form. Yeah, this is the same form that they would use to interview the company accountant. This is the same form they would use to interview the person at the bank who set up the bank account for them. You might find in a criminal prosecution, a big one might have 40, right? And of that 40, there might be maybe 10 guys who are kind of borderline, who are like, yeah, this could go either way for this guy. And then out of those 10, maybe 2 or 3 might end up saying some stupid things and getting themselves thrown in, right? But for the most part, a memorandum of interview, a lot of times that's going to be just anyone, the guy who owns the mailboxes, etc., the guy who owns the FedEx store. Oh, yeah, this guy came in 40 times a day sending out these little packages.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just people that are,
kind of a simple way if I put it was there's a good guy forms and bad guy forms. This usually is a good guy form, but that's not an exact science. So that's where also I'm just listen. I can't, if Jerry and or Boston did something, I'm not trying to walk them back out of it.
Yeah.
They did what they did, but we're just basically trying to say what they did and what came out on the show, and then even especially in the article that you just posted today, it paints a little bit of a not a rosy picture, but a rosier picture of what these two guys actually did. And I don't know. To me, it's listen. They didn't do anything as far as what if I hear, oh wow, this guy's a fucking federal informant. I'm thinking something totally different.
Me too.
Sure.
What these guys did, and I think you explained that really good in the second fucking article. And I just feel that I don't know. It's not that we owe these guys anything. I'm trying to give them a softer landing than what maybe some people perceive after that show aired. That's all. Yeah.
So look, you got to look at it from 2 points of view, right? The one point of view is a strictly utilitarian point of view, right? Mm-hmm. In the end, had these guys not made those videos, had the feds never knocked on their door, this would have ended up exactly the same. Well, with one exception that we could get into. Now you look at it from the other point of view. Yeah. Right. So, but look at it from the other point of view, right? Look at it from the point of view, if your name was on the indictment and your old partner says, oh, yeah, I sat down with the feds for 2.5 hours. I told them about your supplier in Boston. I told them about, the site in India that you get your lab supplies from. I told them you sell clomiphene and HCG on U.S. Fusion Supply, prescription drugs. I gave them text messages. You'd be like, to what? You know,
Yeah.
like if you were on the indictment, you'd be like, you know, F these guys screwed me over. These, you know, so you got to look at it from both sides, right? I think people would feel a certain way about it if it was them, right? They'd be like, hell yeah, these guys are, you know, the worst. But on a practical point of view, they really didn't. I'll tell you what they contributed. Boston Lloyd, what he contributed, I think, changed the course of the investigation. He had information that these guys were sourcing their peptides and other research chemicals from a domestic supplier, domestic wholesaler in Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I think if the feds didn't know that already, and I don't have any evidence that they did, right? So their memorandum of investigation didn't mention this domestic supplier, right? But Boston did. Boston Lloyd did. So I think the reason we saw such a light prosecution was that once Lloyd told them about a wholesaler located in Massachusetts, I think the investigation shifted. I think the Fed said, wait, there's a bigger fish that we could catch, right? There's a wholesaler, domestic, right? Most people get their stuff from China. So if there's a domestic source that's above these guys on the food chain, we want them. So I think that's why the feds went in with such a light hand and just said, oh, it's conspiracy, right? 371 conspiracy, and then conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud. They could have hit them with like dozens of charges. Instead, they hit them with the two lightest charges, and then they let them work. And I think they were working, like, after they got charged, it says they, you know, immediately or soon after being charged, both defendants began cooperating. Okay, but then you have this 18-month or 17-month gap, right? And then all of a sudden, the next document in the case is filed. So that 16, 17 months, that's where they were working to set people up. That's where you start seeing all of the sealed documents, right? Now, all of a sudden, I want to say it was about 16 months. 16 months later, all of a sudden you see a 51K letter, right? That says, hey, we're looking for a downward departure because these guys provided substantial assistance. So I think that supplier in Massachusetts got hit, and I think that was, you know, just based on what I can see, right? This might be totally wrong. I think they set up the guy in Massachusetts.
You're talking about the owners of Performix, right? You're not talking about Boston. Okay.
No, these are the two guys that
you're talking about the owners
made
of
a deal.
Performix, and I just want to make it clear so these people watching us know you're talking about the owners of Performix.
Yes.
Boston didn't really do anything wrong, though. It goes back to when we were saying, you know, guy fucked your wife, and now they're asking about the guy. You didn't do anything wrong by saying, oh yeah, well he's been fucking getting his shit from Joe Montarazzi up in Boston. You know what I'm saying? Right.
Yeah. So what I think. Well, once I think Boston Lloyd started telling them there's a guy bigger than them, I think the feds came in and said, we don't want to get we want the money, right? They always want the money.
That's right.
So I think it was like maybe like 1.6 million that they made, but I think they only got hit for 6 figures in fines and restitution. I think once they knew there was a bigger fish, I think they just completely shifted focus and said, let's hit them with the lightest thing we can. Let's work them for a year and a half, and cut them loose. And the weird thing about this too is they must have really worked, because in the sentencing memo, they're allowed to like the guy said, oh, you know, it would be an undue hardship because I said my wife and I have an online vitamin company or something. That's kind of rare that they let you set up the same business and keep working in the same industry after you committed felonies in that industry, right?
That's almost really rare. I almost look at it like Boston did them a fucking by accident.
Yes.
Boston did them a favor, because if he didn't do that, throw that other Boston company under the bridge, they might have gotten hit a lot harder. They might have done,
100%.
That's right. So Boston inadvertently, by trying to, give them the screw, he actually helped them, So in
Yes.
essence, Boston's almost like
Yeah.
a somewhat silent hero to them because, he
Yep.
gave them the chance to rat on somebody and now they got a lighter sentence. So they're
Everything.
informants.
E-
They are the
everything.
actual informants.
Yeah.
Everything Boston said was by accident. I couldn't believe this. I mean, he admitted like they were having problems getting packages through customs, so he was taking them to his address, and he received 5 packages, and one was leaking, so he repackaged it and he mailed it. Like, he told them stuff that was absolutely incriminating the whole time. Like, he
Let him slide on everything. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And I really think I wouldn't be surprised if so I saw a video of Gil and Novak working out, right? They posted workout videos back in the day, and strong guys like deadlifting like 5 or 6 plates, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if they set up whatever their hand-to-hand source was for gear. I wouldn't be surprised if they set up the guy above that guy.
Right.
I mean, they were working for a long 18 months, 16 months, whatever it was, and they dropped the charge, and they asked for a downward departure, no prison time, probation that had already started. They got a sweet deal. I don't think they just informed on one person. I think they informed on everyone they ever met, starting in high school, that used to sell dime bags. Like this guy in 11th grade sold me a dime bag. You want his name? Like,
Right. Here's his address, his bank account, energy.
Yeah.
The feds, they already had probable cause on these guys before they interviewed Jerry and Boston. To me, all right. Yeah, let's say, okay, now they knew who these guys were, obviously, right? They're going to go and bring them in. They're going to get an indictment. They're going to, have them come in and get processed, arrested, and all of that.
Right.
And they're going to debrief them. But, I mean, the usual way you debrief is you want to get the next guy up in the fucking ladder. So
Right.
you're always looking to get that next guy up there. I don't know if they had a shortcut towards it because maybe they knew something from the interviews. But either way, these guys are the ones that flipped. And this place in Massachusetts, you don't know anything as far as like solid stuff on it. You were unable to get any info on a case.
No, and it would be a wholesaler. Well, I guess it didn't have to be a wholesaler, but looking at regular peptide companies that got busted. So that's one thing to remember, right? Is that some of these peptide companies, like you might look at them and just see a retail operation, but they might get such good pricing because of the bulk orders they're making with China that they're also wholesaling to another dozen smaller companies, right? So this might have been, a retail distributor that also wholesaled to these two, because these two weren't in the business for long. I mean, I think they started Boss Sports Nutrition a few years before Transformics, and it could have been anyone, but I didn't see any busts in Boston, Massachusetts, so I didn't see any likely candidates for it to be a retailer. I'm looking, but I'm still looking.
Because of the deal they got, they definitely had to give something up of value because they had good charges on these guys. They already had their indictment, their arrest. They had, they were going to be able to confiscate and restitution and all of that stuff, cash, and even there was something with the car. I was reading something in the article. So there was a lot of stuff as far as from a Fed standpoint of a big hit with these guys alone. So if they're letting them fucking walk on that bullshit conspiracy, which is fucking nothing. I mean, if they walked out of that thing, they had to give something better than what they were looking at, right?
Well,
I mean,
also
why would you get a deal unless you're getting something better out of the next guy?
Use a little fish to catch a bigger fish. Always.
right.
Exactly.
Also, remember, like, there's guys who had been informing for like a decade. Like I can point to one guy, and by the way, this is all. Believe it's in Virginia. I want to say it's the Western District of Virginia. So this is one specific prosecutor's office.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, these guys also went after they also went after Purdue Pharma. So it's not like they're just getting these stupid peptide companies. These prosecutors have done some good work. They went after some opioid people. So nothing against them, but for whatever reason, I've seen them. They had one informant who's a real informant who 10 years this guy's been working, right, to work off this bust from like 2016, 2015.
Right.
And I've seen his name pop up out of nowhere. I've seen his name pop up and defendants are like, I don't know who this guy is. I've never spoken to him. So there's a certain type of informant who's just in the industry. You know how, like, we're in the industry. We would be able to point to a dozen crimes that we have nothing to do with. We just know they're going on. Some informants are just leading the feds to situations that they're made aware of by virtue of owning a small nutritional company, right? Oh, I know who the guy selling SARMs is. I know who the guy selling whatever is. So, or I know that this HRT clinic, you know, they don't use real doctors, right? Just anything that you would know from being in the industry, that's something that can be traded, right, to get a lighter sentence. So Novak and Gill were in the industry, you know, they'd had Boss Sports Nutrition, they had Transformics, they had US Fusion Supply, they had a bunch of other weird companies that I didn't recognize. But I wouldn't doubt that they were trading information that they just stumbled upon, that they have no inside track for, but just throwing people to the wolves, just anything they could do to not see that prison cell. You know what I mean?
But there's a lot of companies in plain sight, so to speak, that are right out there blatantly selling shit that I'm like, how the fuck did they get away with that? You know what I mean? And you know that they're not even dealing with doctors, half these companies. You just text in your friggin' message and you know, they'll send you anything.
Telehealth.
You know?
Yeah.
But I mean,
Like a fucking Zoom call.
I see a lot of these companies. I'm like, wait a minute, how did he sell? You know, IGF, this, that, that. You know, I'm like, how the hell did he get away with that shit? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so that's a great example, right? You know, you're just aware of them, right? Yeah. And when someone gets busted and they say, you got to give us more, that's what they start thinking. They, going through their head, they start thinking, all right, well, I don't actually know these guys, you know, and I'm not on the inside, but I could throw these guys under the bus too. Like, how many do I have to throw under the bus to get out from under it myself? So
yeah, they'll let you keep going. They're not going to tell you to stop.
Right. And so I wouldn't doubt that they were just right. So that Boss Sports Nutrition, they had a DMAA product, right? They had a, you know, I wouldn't doubt that whoever was making it for them, like whoever was putting it in the bottles, I wouldn't doubt that they got busted too, right? I mean, they had a ton of illegal products. Whoever they could set up, they were going to set up. So that's a manufacturer, right? Like a co-packer, whoever put that powder in that capsule, I'm sure they went down too, right? I'm sure that if they could, they got the overseas people, right? If that was possible. I don't think it would be. I mean, but you get the point, right? It's just
recipients.
100%.
Yeah.
If another company was getting stuff shipped from China. I just want to point out the Craig Velasquez. Bravo, bro. This is a Sopranos reference he's using there. If you guys aren't Sopranos fans, you're not going to get it. Excellent job. Great fucking joke. Excellent. I mean, it makes sense that because of their how they were able to basically escape, that they had to give up. I mean, you know, the government doesn't want, like Greg said, big fish, little fish. The government doesn't want, they'll take a case as far as you can. They're never going to tell a guy and his lawyer, oh, that's enough. You know,
Right.
they're going to tell us everything. You know, we don't know what we're going to bargain down
Right.
there. We still got to go back to the bureau chief, and they can give you all of this. They just drag this thing out as long as they can to see if they can just completely drip dry you of all the information you have, even if it's something that they can't use right now. It might just
But,
go
you know,
on the trail.
I remember that, I don't want to say that there's some lawyers who now they have a year and a half of paychecks coming, right? Because you're not going to talk to the feds without your lawyer, and your lawyer just got this deal for you. And now that lawyer is the go-between. So
They
there are
drag it out themselves.
There are
You're
certain
in a
lawyers
fucking lose-lose situation, no matter how you swing it.
You know what's funny? After the last show, I was getting guys saying to me, bro, he's a rat. They're still like, we're talking about Jerry, right? They're saying, oh, he's still a rat. You talk to him, fucking fed, you're a rat.
Yep.
Not necessarily. If the guy's asking you about some guy that fucked your ex-wife and you're telling him, Erin was right there. She said the guy was sitting on the couch at Jerry's house. And they're like, oh, he's trying to trick him. He had no skin in the game to trick him. In other words, like they're playing good cop, bad cop. No, they're not. How would he do it? Only if Jerry was being charged with something would they try to, play, look, we can get you up, but you got to give us this. They weren't doing that. As a matter of fact, the guy became friends with Jerry, and I think they even trained together a few times. It was like you said, one of you said, I think Anthony said that it's like turn on a coffee pot and let's talk. You know what I mean? It was like that. You know what I mean? It literally was like that. The guy sat there for 2 hours. They talked for 45 minutes about that shit. And then they talked another an hour and a half about working out and this and the other. They were there just to get information on what these guys were all about and everything like that. But there was no charges. Jerry wasn't in any trouble. That's what you guys did. But the people watching this, you talk to feds, you're still a rat. Yeah. And meanwhile, the guy saying that, the first one's to fucking, here's my mother, here's my father. My brother did this. My sister was fucking. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what you're talking about.
You can't take that seriously, man. Guys that have never been in any real situation and or have never done any real shit, they're the first guys. They're the first guys to tell you, the snitches get stitches, keep your mouth shut, blah, blah, blah. These are the first guys that, oh, my mom did this, right? And by the way, what you're saying, a lot of Jerry's memo, I'm looking at it right now. This is what it looks like, by the way.
Right.
I'm looking at it, and it goes into the first video he made was he was commenting on a news report of a woman who got hurt training, and it goes, there is a lot of other stuff in here that's like, here's how I got started in the industry. It actually says how he got started making videos. So there was a lot of other stuff. And Jerry, I didn't know this. I just learned this like a minute before we got on. Is this right? Jerry only promoted the SARMs? He didn't promote the peptides, it seems like. So I think for whatever reason, he thought the SARMs were totally legal, and then just the peptides were illegal, is what it seems like to me.
I think everybody thinks that, Anthony. It's all over the place, everywhere. This guy's doing videos all over YouTube. Take SARMs, take this, Ligandrol, this fucking, Rad 1, 2, 3, whatever. All this shit. It's all over the internet, and there's companies everywhere. SARMs this, SARMs that. Right. You know what I'm saying? So you don't know what the hell to believe. I don't
know how it'd be legal. I don't know the reasoning, right? But imagine this, okay? You put yourself in Jerry or Boston's position.
Right.
You're doing something legal.
Right.
You are doing something totally legal. And now the feds come to you and say, hey, your ex-partners are doing something illegal. In your mind, you're like, I didn't do anything illegal. So in that way, these guys are thinking, I'm a witness. They're not thinking I'm an informant, because in their minds, they thought what they did was legal. What they were doing was not legal. Let's be clear. You can't promote illegal drugs and get a commission off each bottle sold and not be breaking the law.
But half the time they didn't get paid. But the other thing too is, Anthony, you see, you know your shit. Okay, and Joe and I were in the industry, so we know a lot. But when you see SARMs everywhere and all over the companies, I get kids in the gym asking me about steroids, right? You know,
Yeah.
16-year-old kids. I'm like, dude, you had hair on your dick 3 years. You know, it's probably worked out. You know,
Right.
you know what they say to me? Well, what about that SARMs or peptides? And I say to them, dude, get away, don't touch any of that shit. But
Yeah.
that's because they think that that's legal because it's everywhere.
Yes.
So the average person
Yes.
who's getting into working out or getting into supplementation or whatever, they see this shit everywhere. So they think, well, it's not steroids, so it must be legal because it's
Right.
everywhere, right? Am
Right.
I right or wrong?
No, you're right. What's crazy to me, like none of it, like SARMs, right? There's never been a SARM that's been FDA approved ever in the history of history. And people say, oh, well, I got it from my compounding pharmacy. It's like, well, they're breaking the law then. You can't just sell unapproved drugs. Like the compounding pharmacy selling IGF-1 LR3, that's illegal. Like there's no, just because you have if you're buying cocaine from the guy at the pharmacy, it's still illegal, right?
Right. But Big Frank just put up a great, Joe, look at that comment. He's right, dead on right there. He's saying this was 9 years ago before the laws were even more defined than they are now. Because I saw SARMs everywhere. And they were almost in, like when I first saw that shit, I'm thinking, is it a supplement, like M1T or remember all that stuff? Remember M1T?
I thought they were like pro hormones. I didn't know what the heck they were.
Hormones, it's
so this would have been before, for example, Blackstone was charged, right? Blackstone was 2019, and they got hit for a bunch of stuff, but one of the charges was Ostarine, right, which is a SARM.
I remember that.
And they ended up, right? So this is before Blackstone was charged, I believe. So some people might have thought they were. I don't understand how people think it's a dietary supplement. Like where does a SARM appear in nature? Like what plant is that SARM from, right? Again, if I'm going to risk my freedom, I'm going to at least, have some sort of story about why I think something's legal,
Yeah.
I'm not going to risk my freedom based on industry rumor, like, oh, everybody's selling it. And I was,
But the average layman, the average kid, like when these kids were asking me about SARMs and stuff, because I tell them stay away from steroids, they think it's a supplement. It's everywhere, and they talk about it everywhere. So they don't know. Yeah. And a lot of the problem with these companies too, I don't know anything about Blackstone or the other stuff. I know the owners; they're both good guys in my opinion. But some companies they get warnings and they still continue to put shit in their stuff. And that's what causes the biggest trouble,
Well, bodybuilding.com, when they got hit, they were selling 47 different pro hormones, right? Steroids. They had 5 or 7, I forget, warnings. The FDA sent them warnings, and bodybuilding.com replied and basically said, all right, we understand your position, but we think otherwise, so we're going to keep selling them.
That's so fucking
cocky. And look where they are today.
Like, that's an informant telling you.
Barely even on the radar. Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah. If you get a warning from the feds, man, I mean,
it's not a warning.
No, it's not. Yeah. Also, I want to bring up one thing, and I totally agree. I know Dave and John both said it. I don't know if the other guys on the RX panel said it. They may have, not leaving them out on purpose. As soon as anyone in fucking law enforcement comes to your fucking face and says, we want to talk to you, don't fucking talk. Yeah. Right? And this has nothing to do with Jerry or Boston. This is just a blanket statement all around. And Dave said it and John said it. And I cannot reiterate that enough. Don't fucking talk. If they dangle something in front of you, listen, if they were going to fucking take you in, they're going to take you in. It's like, am I under arrest? No, then I'm going home. It's one of those things. Right. Don't fucking say a word, especially if you have a lawyer present, that's only after consult with the lawyer, finding out what the fuck am I doing? Why am I in here? What are they looking at me for? Then you find out. So I definitely want to bring out that they did say a very important thing. And another thing is, the cops don't always have the answers to questions they ask you. Right. Sometimes they do. Many times they do. but not all the time they do. So I don't give a fuck. And Greg used an example of a guy getting locked up in New York City. What's your name? Go fuck your mother. That's
That's the junkies, the real fucking the real drug dealers. You know what I mean? The hardcore.
I got nothing to say, man.
Selling crystal meth. My name is fuck your mother. Okay, fuck your mother. I'm going to jail. So what? My boys are in jail. I've been there, done that. Stick me. I don't give a fuck. So it's very hard to get information. But I just want to say one thing. I ended the last show. Dave said to me, Greg, give us the last word. And I said, the last word is, even if fish would never get caught if it would just learn to shut its fucking mouth. There you go. That that was even a fish would never get caught if it would just learn to shut its mouth. So there you go.
So to just to bring this up too, people think they're just going to talk to me, whatever. If you read, my favorite for this is if you go read the Balco indictments, right? If you go read, they took everyone, they went to Balco, they put everyone in different rooms, and then they said, all right, you're not under arrest, but we want to talk to you. And then then everybody talked. Everybody said, oh, okay, I'm not under arrest. Let me talk to you. And then at the end of the interview, they said, okay, now you're under arrest. And then they gave them their Miranda warning. So
they implicate because they weren't in custody at that time.
Yeah. So they say, look, you're not under arrest. And then so they don't have to Mirandize you, right? They don't have to read you your rights.
Custody plus interrogation equals Miranda. If both of those factors are not present, they don't have to read your Miranda things. So if you if they just say to you, you may talk yourself into a fucking collar, which these guys did.
So that's the thing. That's what I wonder about, right? So they sit you down. They say you're free to go. You're not under arrest. And then, so at that point, you think, oh, this is going to end with them walking out and me going home. That's not the way it's going to end. It's going to end with them saying, okay, thanks for talking to us. Now you're under arrest. When that guy walked through the door, he always intended on arresting you, right? But he did this 2-hour interview without you in custody, right? To get that in before he had to read you his rights. Everybody they said that to got arrested at the end of the interview. You're not under arrest? Oh, now you are. But you walked in knowing you were going to arrest me, right? So why would you say you're not under arrest? It's just to put you at ease and get that information from you. It's always Anthony, to do that.
Did you ever have a chance to read the Mitchell report? Because you mentioned Balco. Okay, because we got copies when I was the editor of New York Sports Team magazine. We all got copies of the Mitchell report. I think that was 07. I remember with the whole Clemens and all of that. And this was the stuff, Greg, with Kirk.
Kirk,
involved.
Our friend of ours, Kirk Radomski. Yeah, he's a good friend of ours.
The Mitchell report. I'm reading the Mitchell report, and I'm flabbergasted by how sloppy some of these guys were writing their own fucking checking accounts for juice, using fucking LA Dodgers Stadium pad. I'm not going to say the guy's name that did it. I mean, it's out there. I mean, the guy was a fucking good guy, and I've interviewed him before. So to me, it's like, you saw that these guys had no idea how fucking deep they were getting themselves in once the fucking genie came out of the bottle. And then MLB just it exploded over there. But explain to him about Kirk, because I'm sure he knows him. He probably read the
Kirk Radomski is a good friend of mine and Joe's. Kirk's the bat boy.
Yeah,
in 1986. He's one of the guys you see running the field and all that. He's the bat boy turned drug dealer. So I guess Anthony knows who he is. He's got the best stories, by the way. Forget the drug shit. You got to hear the stories about
oh my god,
like the private shit, them getting whores, bringing them into the bullpen and shit. Like the greatest stories of the Mets.
Yeah, I read him on Greg and Joe show.
He's got great. He has a book called
the book. What is it called? Bases Loaded.
Yeah. No, I read the book. Those stories aren't in there, but I did read the book.
He's a great guy. He's fucking phenomenal. He's got the best stories about Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden getting blowed up.
Dwight Gooden, Dwight Gooden.
Yeah. Dwight Gooden was
Like he would tell me they go off the street and they pick some fucking scabby fucking whore off the street. You know?
In the limo.
She'd get the fucking limo. She'd be sucking his dick and shit, you know. And not his, but I mean like maybe I shouldn't say his name. The great picture. I just mentioned his name.
Okay.
Anyway, but the thing is that he would say, like, you know, I would say to myself, these guys are making millions of dollars and you're worried about getting a $15 fucking, you know, whore off the fucking street. You don't even know if it's a legitimate woman anyway, right, Joe? Over there with the fucking the L and shit, right? You know,
80s New York City
oh
hookers.
my God.
Allen Street. Oh my God.
And they would go and get, instead of taking the scuttle that you're making and less risk, less trouble.
Right.
I mean, like, I think Strawberry, didn't he get like an undercover cop one time walking out there? You know what I mean? Like, dude, just go pay for an escort service. You got fucking millions of dollars.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
fucking,
Yeah, some of these guys,
And shit, you know, with the fucking horse.
some of these guys don't see it that way, man. It's weird. It's weird how people can make so much money, but then they're cheap, right? When it comes to other stuff.
Oh my God, Anthony, that fucking blows my mind.
It's like,
I have even friends like that are millionaires and they're like fucking, you know, nickel and diamond shit. You know,
yes.
My friend's got $17 million in the bank. No shit, right? I went to dinner with him on Sunday, and he didn't like he gave the waiter. It wasn't the waiter's fault, you know. He didn't like the waiter. So he gave the guy $5 tip. The bill was like $100 some dollars. Then when we go, if it's a girl, right? If it's a girl waitress, he'll throw her $50 and shit.
I know who you're talking about now. Right, Greg?
Yeah,
I know him too, through you. Yeah.
Yes, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Jesus Christ, $5 you threw the guy. I was like embarrassed, you know.
Yeah, that's terrible, man. But you know, it's weird. It's weird how people don't, you know, they won't think twice about that. There's like some people spend $1 million on one thing and then something else, right, that keeps them out of trouble. Like guys ordering, right, just the guys that ordered the peptides from Transformics. Why would you order that under your own name, right? If you're an Olympic lifting athlete, why would you put that order in your own name? Why wouldn't you just get a friend to order it? Like, so they're showing up on customer lists. Just don't put your own name. But why? You know,
that's exactly what the mission was. Same issue with that.
It's the guys who made millions of dollars, right? That are rich, right? That have a big. But then you get the social media influencers, right? That are making ridiculous money. By the way, I feel like you shouldn't even get paid for social media because it's making nobody wants to work. Yeah, everybody's whole fucking career choice right now is to be a content creator. Anyway, and it's the stupidest shit. Girls going like this and shit, and they make, you know, million followers just because they're semi-hot. But anyway, these fucking people, it's the opposite. They're going out, they're making a scuttle, they're buying these big fancy cars, and then when their shit hits bottom all of a sudden, then they're, you know, out there. I need a GoFundMe. They took $1 million my thing, you know what I mean? Because I can't pay for my Bugatti, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, you shouldn't. You know, some people live high in the hoof, right? And then the others are like fucking Joe Misers, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like my no, it's the way they allocate the money, right? It's the way they allocate it, what they think is smart to spend money on. Like, and again, it goes back to Transformics. You're driving a Corvette, you're making millions. Why are you screwing a guy out of $15K? Really?
Why are you creating a bunch of people who now have it out for you? All you're doing is lining up people that now have a grudge with you, right? You're in a position in your life, you're a millionaire, but you're creating an army of people who dislike you, right? Don't just
Anthony, you're so right. You know why? Because back years ago, I worked at this bar, and she would give us like $50, like the owner of the bar, and we would all steal money from the door because we were, you know, and we were loyal workers. But she'd want you there fucking 2 hours early and not get paid for that shit. And I'm like, $50? Are you fucking kidding me? Everybody, all my other friends are making at least 120. This is like, you know, you're talking a long time ago, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so we would be like, fuck that. You know, if you feel like you're getting fucked over, you'd be like, fuck that. I'm housing some of that money, you know, some of that scuttle.
Of course.
That's your steal.
You're not loyal. You're not loyal. You want me to come in 2 hours early. I'm supposed to be there at 9, but you want me in there at 7. I get out at 4 in the fucking morning. You give me $50?
Right.
I'm going home with 150 because I'm housing
Right.
fucking $100 in the door.
Yeah. Look, you're gonna pay one way or the other.
Right.
Right?
That's
You're gonna pay one way or the other. Right? Yeah. All right.
Do it
You
the-
think you're getting one over? That's the thing. You think you're getting one over on this ex-employee or this employee? They're getting that money. They're gonna get it one way or the other. You know,
100%.
that's what I was saying. That's exactly what I said about Jerry in Boston. Oh, you think you got one over on them? No, you didn't. You
Right.
didn't.
Yeah.
And especially if that person's in trouble and they come to you and you're like, what do you want to know? Sit down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Where I
saying?
said the
Yeah.
revenge. No, the
revenge.
third part of informant is a revenge, and it's kind of to me that takes that rat persona or label away from that person, because now there's
The same here. The only
they
thing
didn't
that
have skin in the game, but they have their own skin now at that point to
Well-
fuck these guys over because they got fucked.
people don't like rats because of the betrayal aspect. Because
Yeah.
and if you take that out of the equation, now you don't have a rat. If nobody's getting betrayed, right?
Yeah.
So
That's what I said. Yeah.
that's what I said from the beginning. Boston and Ward, they did not betray anyone.
Thank you.
To me, that's the thing. Yeah. Were did they give information? So they informed? Yes, but they weren't rats. Like,
But did you ever notice, honestly, both you guys, did you ever notice the first guy to point, he who smelt it, dealt it, they always rats, always call everybody else a rat, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Certain people making a whole big thing, rat, calling another guy rat, and isn't it funny how every mafia guy, all the guys I hate, rats, Sammy the Bull Gravano killed people.
Right.
Were rats. Greg Scarpa would kill people. They called him the fucking
Grim Reaper.
Right, a Grim Reaper, Greg Scarpa.
Yep.
But what was he? He was a federal informant.
Whitey Bulger, right? Whitey Bulger, the biggest rat of everyone.
He got in jail.
Oh,
when
he was taking out his competition by ratting them out.
Yeah.
He was taking the Italians out, and he was running the Irish mob.
But that's what I'm saying. All these guys, and you know what's funny? Most of them guys are really nothing if you get them alone without a crew and without the element of surprise and without a gun. A lot of those guys are not tough guys. There's guys who say that Sammy the Bull, he says, they call me the bull because of the way I used to fight like a
when he
bull.
was a kid.
But then when you talk, there's other guys who were in that crew who said that's bullshit. They call him Bull because he was from Bull's Head, Staten Island, or whatever the fuck. Am I right or wrong, Joe? You ever hear that?
Well, he says that they called him the Bull because he was fighting to get his bike back from the bigger kids in the neighborhood, and the guys at the social club saw him and said, "This kid fights like a bull."
Right.
I don't know.
I've also heard other people say, I
never heard the Staten Island thing.
From Bull's
That I
Head,
never
Staten
heard.
Island, from
Because
Bull's
he was
Head.
born in Bensonhurst, in my old neighborhood.
Yes. But I mean, it's something about Bull's Head. I think it's Bull's Head. Isn't it Staten Island? It's Bull's Head.
I think there is a
Look,
Bull's Head. I'm not really sure. Yeah.
I got nothing against Sammy the Bull, but when I see these guys going out there talking about it, we did this and we whacked this guy and we did all this shit. Meanwhile, you were a rat. Second of all, you're talking about other people who they have children and grandchildren and shit, and they're watching this and they're listening to we cut him up and beat me and Bobby B cut him up and threw him in a fucking garbage bag, and we dumped his body down there over fucking Hillside Bay, whatever the fuck, Sheepshead Bay. We threw it in, and you're sitting there going, wait, that was my grandfather. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you're making money doing that shit. You know how much?
Bro, he sells shirts with the number 19 on it because he admitted to being involved in 19 homicides.
See, that's why social media has destroyed this shit. Okay, because it's made these guys, everybody who's ever got locked up, who's locked up but was a shot caller. You know what I mean? The guy Wes Watson, all these guys are talking bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what? The bad guy is the guy that you don't say a word that you see in jail. It's the nut. You know what I mean? They're real nuts. They're not the real nut jobs that went to jail. They're not going to start their own YouTube channel and talk. They don't want to talk to anybody. They hate everybody. They'll kill a kid. They don't give a shit. They have no heart. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to start a YouTube channel saying, I was a shot caller. I did this. All these people who do that shit are all full of shit. Nobody.
Well, that's what I was thinking too when you brought up family. Like, the feds walked in, Ward's wife is there or whatever. Again, you think these guys are going to say, the Fed, they say, look, we're not after you. You think he's going to turn to his wife and be like, I don't care if they're not after me. I'm not saying a word. Those guys that they rip me off for 15K, no way. I'm not saying a word. You got your kid there, you got your wife there, and what you're gonna that's the stand you're gonna take. That's the hill you're gonna die on to protect the guys that
Yes.
rob your family.
Anthony, usually they would want you to come. Joe was a detective, so Joe knows it. Usually they'd want you to come down to the fucking office and talk to them. They're not going to do it in your living room where they're sitting on your couch. Yeah, I'll take 2 lumps of sugar with that tea. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to sit on your couch. And, I mean, they went to his house and sat on his couch.
Yeah.
With his wife.
No, they didn't want him. They did not want. They didn't want him. They didn't want Boston. The second time, Ward met up with them a second time at a Wegmans, like a Wegmans supermarket, cafe, whatever. And they brought the AUSA to talk to him the second time. But I still don't think, I just don't think he was at all under any threat. I think it was
he wound up making friends with one of them. I know that. You know what I mean? He was straight with the guy. And I doubt they would say, meet us at Wegmans. We'll lock him up there. You know what I mean? They would say, come to the office. We just want you to fill out a couple papers. We just want to talk to you one more time. Sit in the office for a second. Because they'd also want to film the thing, wouldn't they, Joe?
Maybe not. I mean, there's different things, and I don't know if any of them pertain here of why you would want to interview somebody, A, in their house, B, at a third-party location, or C, at the station house. There's pluses and minuses for all three of them. And Anthony, you and I were talking about this on the phone the other day as well. It all depends. You don't have to record these things. I mean, when I was doing this shit, we didn't really have the ability to do it. We used to use actual little tape recorders. Remember the little tape recorder? You had to press play and record. If you want to record off the radio, so you put the radio next to it when we were kids, Greg, right? That was the ones that I fucking used. I didn't have these cameras in the fucking ceiling and shit, So I guess it shows you.
No, I don't actually like this on the federal level. I don't like that it's just what the agent remembers, right? Like, so I want to say this guy's name is Special Agent McMillan, the Ward was interviewed by. I don't like that it's just what the agent remembers, because just having worked, some cases, a lot of times the guy who got interviewed, right, the defendant or the witness or whatever, when they see the memorandum of interview, they're like, oh, I didn't mean it like that, or I didn't mean it like this, or
I didn't even say it like that.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I said this other thing, like, or a lot of times that thing that the agent remembers, or the way the conversation went to the agent, is very different, and that could be solved by just recording it, but they don't. They never record it. Right. They always just have the agent, hey, just, when you get home, write it down. But that's suspicious to me. I never liked that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree 100%. Jeff Morabito, what's up, guys? Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Hey,
this
Jeff.
is an interesting one. Hugo de Claus, and you just had mentioned when they came to have Jerry's wife coming on the show.
No,
listen, I don't think she would, but if she ever
wants
wanted
no
to,
part of this.
I don't blame her. But if she ever wanted to talk about it, obviously the invitation is always open, especially because people are putting shit out they can believe they're her. If she even wants to just clarify that.
Well, she's not too happy with the other show that I do. You know what I'm saying? She's not too happy.
I could understand why. That's why if she did want a platform to talk about it, I would be more than, Greg and she's welcome. You're friends with her,
Yeah, I'm good friends with her.
I met her a few times when they were together at shows and stuff. So, she'd be more than welcome on the show anytime she liked. And if she doesn't want nothing to do with talking about this, I totally see that as well. I mean, it's got to be tough, and she doesn't want the guy's name dragged through the mud, and neither do Greg or myself, and neither I know you too, Anthony. I mean, you're putting it out as a journalist with the way you're putting it is like I said, you're letting the reader decide at the end of the movie. Is it that's the best movies are directed, but the viewer decide of stuff about the movie. And Anthony's articles, that's how they.
It was never about Anthony being like that. There was never, nobody thought, oh, Anthony. It was the
Yeah.
interpretation that others were saying, and the way it was like, almost like Laura, like, you know, relishing in that shit. That's
Yeah.
where I'm getting the feedback from those, you know, people saying to me, that shit's not right. You know, it's nobody ever said Anthony's name, to be honest with you.
No. I know. I agree. 100%. That's
was
why,
the
I mean,
interpretation.
I think the way he wrote it was, you know, it was as a guy that did law enforcement and as a guy that's a journalist, I'm reading that shit there, and I'm like, man, this fucking guy hit it out of the park. I mean, with this stuff.
Thank you.
And oddly
Yeah, I
enough,
think he
we
did a
used to
great
both
job.
write for the same magazine, Muscle Evolution, South
Yes.
Africa.
Yeah.
You
No,
wrote
but
for them.
Anthony worked for MD too. Didn't you work for MD for a while?
I wrote an article for MD. I wrote
I
an article
remember.
for MD. I wrote one for Muscle and Fitness. You know, I bounced around.
Yeah,
Because
but
I
you were
remember
steady
seeing
with
it.
Muscle Evolution from South Africa. And
Yes, I
doing
was with
stuff
them for like a
about-
decade.
I think about 2 years or so, I was doing stuff with them. I loved that publication. It was different size than American magazines. It was actually like almost longer in a way. It was weird. If you put a Muscle and Fitness or an MD next to it, it was a little longer. It was like I don't know, maybe a quarter.
Yeah.
of an inch
It's a different paper, and
Yeah,
I don't know.
beautiful.
I remember MD towards the end was just like just all ads. Well, towards the end of the
that's a good
it was
thing.
like-
Being in the fucking publishing industry. I mean,
it was the size of a
That's
dictionary, and you couldn't find any articles. Like you just looking through it, like,
yeah,
is there an article
but that-
anywhere in here?
It's
Yeah,
a pamphlet.
that's
It was a pamphlet.
that's not a bad thing as a publisher. Steve, he did get a lot of ads, and but
Yeah.
Muscle Evolution, that was funny because you know, I know you wrote for them for a long time, and I had my foot in that door too. I wrote for them for a
Mhm.
while. Great, they're not around anymore, I don't think, right? And
No, they might be
Online?
digital only now. I'm not sure,
Okay.
but the print magazine, no.
Yeah, it was great. It was so different because I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about those federations. So they would mail me my copy, and I used to love reading about these things in South Africa. Greg, this was a Muscle Evolution, it was called. It was really high grade.
I've heard. I
layout
might have
was
actually. I
dynamite
might
in
have
it.
actually gotten a copy of that magazine somewhere. I think I had everything.
You probably over the years have. It was around for a long time, and
Yeah,
I
it was
really
great.
glad-
Andrew, the publisher, is great.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing your articles in there all the time too.
Well, the
Jeff,
internet-
you was talking to Brian in Long Island, the men's health. I sad to say, Jeff, Brian passed away a few years ago. I don't have details on why. Very sad. He was a really nice guy. He was a TRT clinic guy that I used to go to and did some cool stuff with for MSM. And I don't know the actual cause of what he died from. I have no idea, but yeah, he probably around 2022, I'm thinking. But just to give Jeff an update on that. Sorry to give you the bad news, but it's the truth. I mean, I don't know the way I could. I hate, Greg, the truth hurts. I hate to say
The
it.
truth hurts. The truth hurts. That's what you should title the show, Joe. Listen, let me tell you something.
I'm just being a jerk off. I'm cool out.
No, we're all, listen. The truth hurts, Joe. It's the truth.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. You know, the fucking internet is ruined. Obviously, everything, because the magazine industry is dead now. Because people go to these YouTube guys who've been training 2 years, and you know they took a cycle from day one. Oh, well,
There is one left, Greg.
The last of the Mohegans, right here. I'm over here pointing like you could see. The last of them.
Every
By the
year.
way,
That's
there you
Greg.
go. There I am. That's the Ramblin' Freak, except it's called Talking Smack. It's the same shit. If you like the Ramblin' Freak, that's the
Ramblin'
last
Freak.
thing. We got to get Anthony to do some fucking shit in that magazine.
I would love it.
We
I don't know
gotta
if I can afford it.
But
Fucking around.
but here's the thing. And if any guys want to sponsor that, talk to Joe, because we get sponsors. That's how you write the magazine. But listen
Yeah.
to me. You know, the magazines now, today you can go online, and I see these guys, even girls today. You know, I'm doing personal trainings. I'm like a fitness expert. You know, you've been training 2 years. You took a little babanya. You think you know everything. You know what I'm saying? I fucking hate that. See, the magazine to me was elite. But no more. They ruin that shit, you know?
Double-edged sword. I think
What's
it's
that?
a double-edged sword, Greg, because the magazine was really good about weeding out the people that, just like a hot girl, right? That just has an Instagram account that just been training for 2 years, great genetics, and now she's got 5 million followers, right?
Right.
The magazines were great at letting some of the cream rise to the top,
Right.
but at the same time, sometimes they were also gatekeeping some good people out because, maybe politics, right? This person that maybe runs this federation doesn't like them, so now they don't get a look. So I think it's a double-edged sword. The magazines helped,
I
but
understand,
they hurt.
but I felt like the information was more like, the people
Yes.
that wrote for that knew. They knew
Yes.
what they were doing, okay? Today, Anthony, you've been in this game for a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know you a long time. And I'm just telling you, there are people who just came about a couple of years ago. And if somebody said, do you want to talk to Anthony Roberts or do you want to talk to Joe Matarazzi here, who's got 5 million followers and he doesn't know half, you take shits.
Right.
You take shits that know more than that guy. That
Right.
will know more than that guy will ever know. But people see because he's a big internet guy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
You've earned your stripes. You've been around a long time. You know the game. These people. Anybody can start a YouTube channel, look good, and all of a sudden, get followers. People think just because somebody looks good, they know what they're doing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, no, I see it all the time. I see the people with like one guy was like, I'm one of the top 3. I don't know where he came up with this number. I'm one of the top 3 experts in SARMs in the world or peptides in the world, and it's like, what? Like, and it's just based on, I have 1 million followers or whatever, right?
Well, look at that guy Louis Marco, right? When he came around when YouTube first started, and he said he got his information by reading the magazines.
He was doing birds.
Louis Marco.
But he when he started, because he was in the lifting weights, and he would talk about like like shit that he read in the like he got his information from reading magazines, but because he was like in the right place, right time, all of a sudden but he doesn't know his asshole from a hole in the ground. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Greg, he had like pet birds. His channel was about how he cared for the birds in his house. And I don't know how he morphed into this fucking bodybuilding thing, but it was like a whole big thing with fucking Phil Heath actually went live and was giving him shit right after he won the Olympia and went backstage. Like they were getting to how to beat. Remember that, Greg? It was
yes, I do remember that. But
like
he was
2012.
He was already Big Willie because he's. I remember him. I watched an interview with him, and he said there were like 5 people talking about working out when he started. So he figured I'm into working. He just worked out recreationally, and he said I would read the magazines, and then I'd say like, "There's a good article here on how to train biceps." And the people would start, but right place, right time. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people who I watch on these things. Everybody's a fucking expert. You know what I mean? And they don't know shit just because they look good. And then they all start their own supplement,
Right. Yeah.
Anthony, your book, your steroid book is still as one of like the Bible of the
Thank
book.
you.
And what year was that published? I mean, that was
2005, 2006.
I mean, that was like you could not get more like detailed than
But see,
what you did in that book. Every fucking compound, how you broke it down, and it was just so full of every bit of information about anabolic steroids that I mean, we had a copy in the office in MD when I worked there.
Oh, yeah, I remember the book. I remember his book very well. But that's what gets lost today. Is books like that with information when people would just rather go on Joe Matarazzi YouTube and like, today we're going to talk about steroids. And sometimes you could actually, you ever watch this? You ever watch a guy giving information and you see him looking like this because he's actually reading it off the computer? Do you ever see that? So testosterone binds with the receptor and then you see him, you know what I'm saying? The conversion of estrogen to DHE, and they sit there and you watch and he's actually reading it. And there's people that sit there like, oh, he's so knowledgeable.
I got sent a video. You guys know Chris Bell, right?
Yeah. Bigger, stronger.
I got sent a video by Chris Bell, and it's a very well-known like steroid guy, steroid expert, whatever, an online guy, very well known. And halfway through the video, I realized he's reading something I wrote.
As an
And
expert.
I was like, Chris, I wrote that. And Chris was like, that's why I sent it to you.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. I can't tell you how many times somebody sends me a video, whatever, and I'm like, what do you think of this guy? And I'm looking, and I see the guy, I can see his eyes go like this, then like this, then like this, because he's reading it right here off the fucking thing.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like a book that you have in your hand, because you can just kind of like focus on it. But the problem is, this shit is killed. The internet. Now, and nobody wants to get a job. Everyone wants to be a content creator. They're having trouble. I just saw
Influencer.
where they were saying that people don't even want to go to get a job on Wall Street anymore. They think if I really am smart, I can market myself on YouTube and make millions of dollars. Think about how many you see these stupid girls. There's a girl I saw who makes over $1 million a month, and not for nothing. She's okay, but I could go to the mall over here and see cuter girls. You know what I'm saying? My daughter has a friend, this big fat black chick. Listen, I swear to God, this big fat black chick. She's disgusting, right? She's big, fat. Black.
She watched this show?
And no, I hope not. I'm in trouble. But anyway, it's one of my daughter's best friends. They went to high school together, right? You know what she does? She makes a fucking shitloads of money on. You know what she does? That mukbang shit. Some idiots pay her to
watch her eat.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like you ever watch that guy Nikado Avocado, Joe? He started out as 130 pounds. He went all the way up to 500 pounds, where he was in a wheelchair and he had to give him oxygen, and then he lost it all.
So you want to see? You guys will laugh. You want to? So this is the book I'm reading right now.
Snitching, Criminal Informants, and the Erosion of American Justice. Who's the author? I can't see the author.
The author is Alexandra Natapov. I believe she is a JD who teaches at Harvard. Really great book.
Okay.
If anyone's interested in, I'm not pulling this stuff out of thin air, that's a really good book.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But Anthony, you have a history. You've been in this sport forever. You know what I mean? I know you a long time. I know you a fucking long time. I'm just saying you have a history. These people today that are making the big struggle on social media are Johnny come latelys. When you know what I'm saying? They were diapers when you were doing this shit. And I'm just saying, so there's nothing like experience. That people who have experience, who've been around. You know what I mean? And they're reading your work and spewing your words and getting paid money for it. And I just think I think that's what's killing this fucking country,
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's just people, just like, the level of misinformation, and they just say it with such confidence, like, oh, this is how this drug works. And this is, it's legal because it says not for humans. Like, the level of misinformation is crazy.
Well, like you just said, you just actually gave the best example of misinformation when you said that this guy said he's in the top 3 experts in the world. Yeah. Where'd you get that? How do you know you're in the top 3? From what? What makes you a top 3
there a list expert? Somewhere? Yeah.
Yeah, I could sit here and say, I get mistaken for Brad Pitt all the time everywhere I go. You think anybody believes that though? But
here's the thing, right? Like, okay, where were you? Like, this is what I thought when he said that. He's a guy who I think he founded a compounding pharmacy or something.
Right.
Here's the thing I thought when he said that. Where were you 20 years ago? When my first book was published, where were you when I was writing about, Hexerelin or CJC 1295 20 years ago? I didn't see your work next to mine. Like, where have you been? How did you get to be top 3? And where's the list? Yeah. Who's number 4? Like, where were you 20 years ago? Where were you 5 years ago?
That's what I'm saying. You've earned your stripes. You've been around for a long time, and you've been in the gym. You know people. You know all the guys in the industry. You've written for some of the biggest magazines. Again, I remember seeing you at the MD, and I remember, like Joe said, I know Blackman had your book on the table in there. What I'm saying is that see, these people get lost in translation with that shit. They don't know. You see this kid Sam Sully, God bless him. You know, I hope he does great and everything. I give him a lot of credit. Yes, he didn't need to compete, but this kid's been training a couple years. You know what I mean?
Right.
5 years ago, this kid was like, "Yeah, I think I'll go to the gym, maybe do some lifting weight." You know, you can't. They're not experts. That's not an expert. You know what I mean? I can get. Jesus Christ, if I ever put my son on steroids, if I got him even to work out, hey, my son is a myostatin freak right now. You got to see the fucking size of this kid. He's a monster. Got 20-inch arms. Doesn't even lift weights. You know, he used to do deadlifting in the army, so he's got a really big back. You know, he's huge. My sister-in-law goes to me, "Is he on fucking steroids?" And I said, "No, he doesn't even lift weights." You know, my son's with the intelligence NSA, so you know he doesn't have any time. He works like 80 hours a fucking week.
Okay,
but I mean, he's got the giant calves like Lee Priest. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I'm just saying. Today you give this guy shit.
Big.
I mean, look at the bodybuilders today. Holy fuck! I mean, holy fuck. Lee Priest was 198 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Today you can't get guys. Joe and I have a friend. He's fucking 5'1". He's 255. You know what I'm saying?
Porter Control was sub 200, right? Rich Gaspari was barely.
Dude, everybody. Lee Labrada was like 191. Sean Ray was 190. Yeah. Lee Labrada was 191. You know what I mean? Muhammad Ali was like 160 fucking something. You know what I'm saying? Of course, he's really small, but you got to be kidding me. There's a lot of guys who were great bodybuilders. Back then, I mean, Lee Haney was 235. They thought he was a monster. You know what I mean?
Right.
Today, you got guys fucking 5'2" competing at that. They were going to raise. Look, it was 202. They couldn't even get anybody to get the 202 class because it was too. So they raised it to 212. Now they're thinking about getting it even higher. Because you get even short guys that can't even fucking get to 212. It's too fucking low.
Right.
Right. Remember when Schwarzenegger won the Olympia? Okay, everybody was in the 200 and under. There was only 3 or 4 guys in the over 200.
Right, Franco Colombo, on the
Franco was I think 178.
It was just
weight 170. He was 5'3". I met him many times. But you know, he's small. You know what I mean? And he was, you know, I'm just saying these guys. Danny Padilla, another one. I think
that's right. Giant killer.
168. You know, all these guys were great, but they were even Frank Zane. I know he wasn't huge, but he's a little bit taller. He was way under 200. I think he was in the 170s, 180s. I'm just
178, something I think.
Yeah, something like
Francis Benfato, right? If that's how you say his name.
Francis Benfato had the best body. Samir Banu, all those guys. But you know what's funny? As the human being evolved. Since Lee Priest competed and won all those shows, in my opinion, he's the greatest short bodybuilder. He could have won the 202 1,000 times already. But, you know, he got fucked. But the thing is, has the human being evolved since 2005, 2006? Or has the drugs gotten ridiculous? Where now today, everybody's 300 pounds in the off season. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, people are dropping dead now, too, right? We never had that. It was rare. It was really rare. You got
young guys, too, Anthony.
You had Andreas Munzer, and you had... what's his name? Mohammed Benaziza, and those were the only 2 for like 50 years. There was 2. Period.
And look how long the Mr. Olympias. They only died when they were old. Like Larry Scott was the first one. He was old, and then Sergio went. Franco
got Sean Roden.
Cedric McMillan, Dallas McCarver.
Such a different. I mean, you're talking these guys fucking lived 50 years after they stopped fucking competing.
Yeah, but the thing is, Joe, even like
Olympia winners.
Joe, I was at the New York Pro, right? And I was with Branch Warren, and he goes to me, "Bro, wait till you see this fucking guy. I can't believe how big he is." Right? Now I was going there to root for my boy Victor because I love Victor Martinez, and I'm over there. And he goes, "Greg, you got to see this guy." Guy comes out, it's Big Randy, right? And we were all like, "This is Branch Warren saying this to me, who's also a mass monster." But 2-3 years ago, Big Ramy wasn't even that jacked. I mean, these guys get it from overnight. You know what I mean? In 3 years' time, they go from being like, you know, just an average body. But you ever see what Nick Walker used to look like and shit like that? And Derek Lunsford competed as a in a 202 or whatever the fuck it was, you know. Mm-hmm. These guys, and then all of a sudden they're fucking monsters. Is it because they've been eating much better? And it's today there's a drug for every process of the body.
Look at Dallas. Look at Dallas McCarver, senior year in high school, right? He was like an offensive lineman. He was kind of like pudgy. Like he looked like just, like a pudgy offensive lineman. What did he pass at 23? Right? How far is that from senior year in high school? 5 years later, he's a contender for the Mr. Olympia. Even if he trained since he was 12, how much training history does he have? Right?
In the old days, I trained 23 years before I ever took a steroid. You got to train. That's why, I've had cancer, I've had everything else. I still look, pretty goddamn good considering I'm 65 years old, But what I'm saying is that, it's that these guys today go from, there's a kid right now who's starting to go to a gym today. And in 4 years from now, he might be a new sensation where everybody at the Arnold Expo's in lines for him. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's Gundo, and is it,
right?
Wow, that 4 years, he really just put in his work. But you also remember, a lot of these guys, when they stop, they look like Pee Wee Herman, like they never even touched the weight.
Right. I mean? Yeah. Like what are the Trend twins going to look like, at 65?
Dude, they've already had issues. I've heard one of those kids was in the hospital. They look like they're 40. The problem is look at like Tom Prince. I remember Tom Prince. I used to talk. He was a monster. He was so huge. When he went off that shit before he died, he looked like Lance Armstrong when he was riding, like skinny. You know what I'm saying? Right. A lot of guys, to me, even what's his name? Paul Dillette. Paul Dillette, who was such a mass monster.
Huge.
With shoulders and everything. If you saw him on the street and and he told somebody, I was once, one of the best bodybuilders in the 90s. They'd be like, you get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Right.
Yeah.
These guys are all
very different.
No foundation. No foundation, a lot of the guys, Just
right in. Isn't it funny, though, how social media has changed this shit? You know what I'm saying? It's just like now with all the trannies that are floating around, like the fucking, and I'm not talking about the good looking ones, I'm talking about the beasts, you know what I mean? Everybody today's changing their sex. All this is all because of this fucking YouTube and social media shit. You know that, right?
Yeah. No, and I know what you're saying. It's also like the social media, like, I don't know if you remember the guy, Musclehead 320 or something.
He writes for Joe. He works for the magazine. He's a good guy, Tyler Bauman.
Yes. He was saying in an interview, that like he just posted on Instagram and people would just go into his DMs and be like, where do I get steroids? Like it used to be that if you wanted steroids, you had to actually work out at a gym for years.
Yeah.
Right. That's Tyler's article on the new issue.
There it is right there.
Yeah.
It's funny that you
just
say that because I still get that all the time. I get guys, do you have any good sources of gear? I'm like,
it's not how it works. It's not how it works. Like you had to train at a gym and everyone had to know you. And like you had to be like a good guy. Like nobody wanted to talk. Now it's just people jump into Instagram and ask Tyler who they don't know. Right? They don't know him. They'll just go in. Where do I get that? Where do I get that? It's like
we used to get it from a fucking pharmacy in Brooklyn.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you where you can get this Swole energy because I'm fucking Fred Joe. I only drank like 3 sips. It still looks clear, but that's pinkish. 3 fucking sips. I'm flying. I got that. When you get that swimming pool kick when you take the energy stuff, and I feel like you gotta pee. I like this shit. Right there, baby. Swole energy.
That's it. MSM code 15. Guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. Anthony, I can't. And if Greg, if we left anything out, please. I don't have the Tide bottle. I don't have the Tide bottle under the desk. So I got my old man fucking bladder is screaming. Tyler is out, Jeff. Tyler got out about a year ago. I think he's still in the halfway house. Yeah, he's home.
He's home.
Yeah, he's home. He's doing fucking excellent. I talked to him a lot with the magazine and stuff. Really fucking good guy. And he was like Boston Lloyd's like one of his better friends. And
he's a great guy. Yes.
Like fake natty on his hat and a lot of the videos that Boston's in. Tyler's the guy training with him and hanging out with him. So they were really tight. And he was in jail in federal lockup when Boston passed away. I don't know, he wasn't even.
Oh
That
yeah,
sucks.
Not
Yeah.
family. They're not going to let him go to the fucking wake. Or
Sucks.
nothing, accompanied by them. So yeah, it was egregious. Thank you so much, my friend. So anything did I leave anything out, guys, that you want?
No. I am going to do a third part to the article that goes into just goes into the drugs, explains what the drugs were.
Good.
Very different from the other two. Really nothing to do with the indictment per se. Just stuff I find interesting that there was no space for in the first two articles. So that'll be on Think Steroids next week.
we got to get
okay.
Joe. We got to find a way to get him into the magazine here. We need some sponsorship.
Yes, I will
too.
definitely chat with you, Ed, about
Sure.
that. Since you're a magazine guy, it would be cool to have. I got Romano writes an article in there. John writes, so we got a lot of.
Whoop, you
What did you
froze
say,
up now.
Greg?
No, you froze for a second.
I'm sorry. What did you say about John?
I was saying John Romano, right? He writes.
Oh, okay.
And over the years, he had Rich Piana, he had Boston Lloyd, he had Jerry Ward, which is ironic. Even Lee Priest was writing for us.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had
Cool.
a lot of names in it. I would love to add your name to the fucking masthead. It would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm on. I'm on board.
All right.
Let's work
We'll
together.
talk,
We'll
man.
do some shit.
Yeah.
Anthony, please plug anything you want to plug. You want to plug the thinksteroids.com
nothing.
or anything else?
Just the Think Steroids article. The next one's going to be different than the first two. I like the first two, but it's a 3-part series. Everyone check it out.
Very cool.
Sounds great.
Excellent.
Sounds great.
And GreggValentino.net and .com, right? You have both now, right?
That's right. Well, yes. .net.
Get the Momo shirts.
To get the Swol shit. It's very good stuff right there, bro.
Yeah, they sent you cool packaging. The box.
Yeah, the box is really nice too. Nice box.
And
I prefer
nice
Joe,
box.
Joe, let me tell you why.
Yes,
I like this box. You know why? Wait, let me tell you. Because Joe, you know that I like a box with a little hair on it.
Oh, look at.
I like a hairy box. I'm from the 70s, bro. They have the look. Joe,
Look,
look,
you jealous?
Joe, look. I got a hairy box. Holy shit!
They got the guy there, but yeah, definitely check out Anthony's stuff on thinksteroids.com. Go to GreggValentino.net and get Momo shirts. He's got great articles on there as well, and of course, SwolLyfe.com, MSM15. You save 15% on all of their stuff. Here's Swole Test, so you can get test boosters.
Can I inject
supplementary needs.
I inject that Swole?
Maybe we can reconstitute it. We can do something.
Wait, we'll put Anthony's link too on the thing here on the bottom. So when somebody who's watching the show posts
they can click at the end.
Somebody comes back. Yeah, make sure
Good
you
point.
put his link in here so that you can watch, so you can go to Anthony's thing. Anthony, man, you're the guy, bro. I love you. You're a
Thank
good
you.
man. You're a good man. You're a good man. Much respect to you.
Thank you, guys.
Let me put that up and leave it for a bit. Joe, hang on.
Well, in the
This
show
is the link.
description.
And the link,
somebody watches-
it's in the comments that this is the link right to part 2 that just came out before we went on air today. And also you can get the links for part 1. Read both. Watch the RX episode 2 if you didn't see that. So maybe if some of the things we were talking about, you guys might say, what the fuck are they talking about? Catch up on all of that. And we will be back Wednesdays at 3:00 is our regular time for Swol Lyfe presents the Greg and Joe Show with today's special guest, Anthony Roberts, of course. Anthony, fucking bang up job. Thank you so much, my friend, for being on our show. It was our pleasure to have
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Thank you,
Anytime.
Anthony.
All right, guys. We will see you guys on Wednesday. If my mouse would get on. You don't check when the mouse doesn't show up on the screen. I want to just fucking slam it. All right, guys. Have a great day. See you later.
Take care, Anthony. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Hey,